It's never taken, it's given. And we give people power. So I'd like to ask each one of you here to talk about that moment where, boy, you had this difficulty with someone who was in power. And you had to figure out a way to turn this obstacle ultimately into a win, because each and every one of you got here by facing challenges, things that seemed impossible. And at the time they were impossible. They probably took 10, 20, 100,000 steps. Because you women up here are the ones that I want my daughter Elsa.
Alex, I'm from India, live in Delhi, and I lead Accor for South Asia.
Goenka from Welspun, living India. I lead a home textile company which spans across 60 countries across the globe. We are one of the largest home textiles in the world. And we not only make baths, towels to sheets to rugs to flooring to everything, and I think you would have touched, we would have touched your life somewhere, definitely. I think for me, the main purpose is, and the whole, the foundation is being sustainability. And where today we are talking about sustainability being a green scam, DI not being possible. I think for us that's the sense of purpose that motivates us at Welspun Living. We were world number one by Dow Jones Sustainability Index. We scored 90 for our ESG goals this year.
My name is Payal, Kapoor, and I'm the founding director of Arushi. I come from a very privileged old family, business family again. But my focus is also on making Indian art and promoting Indian art on a scalable, financial and sustainable economy with a focus on tribal.
I live in Switzerland. I work for the Adecco group with the purpose of make the future work for everyone, which I love as a purpose for our company. My personal focus is two things actually. One on the private side. I'm married with the same man, I tend to say, for 40.5 years. I have 2 kids and 5 grandkids, so my 5 grandkids are really my focus. On the personal side, on the professional side, I would say that being the Chief Digital and IT Officer for the Adecco, more and more it becomes a tech company at the end of the day. And so I would like that our whole function can have impact on the business. And the business for me is shareholders, employees, and all the communities.
Take your seats, please, and we're going to get going. I know we're a bit of a time crunch here. So this is an interesting panel named Women, Wealth, and Global Power. You know, I hear this word wealth. My beginning was in foster care, so I'm a foster care alumni. And I look at wealth today a little bit different. While some of my friends have what people would perceive as wealth, with money and houses and things, my wealth will be the people around me. I call it my family. And all of you now are in the Dustin family as well. We have a limited amount of time. I will make some quick, hopefully we'll do some quick introductions. The story of what's your name, where you're from in the world, what you're focusing on right now, and then we're going to dive into the panel. How's that sound? That sound good?
All right. Thank you, Dustin. My name is Ranju, Alex. I'm from India, live in Delhi, and I lead Accor for South Asia.
Hi. Hello. Hi. My name is Payal Kapoor, and I'm the founding director of Arushi. I come from a very privileged old family, business family again. But my focus is also on making Indian art and promoting Indian art on a scalable, financial and sustainable economy with a focus on tribal Indians.
Hi everyone, I'm coming from Belgium. I live in Switzerland. I work for the Adecco group with the purpose of make the future work for everyone, which I love as a purpose for our company. My personal focus is two things actually. One on the private side. I'm married with the same man, I tend to say, for 40.5 years. I have 2 kids and 5 grandkids, so my 5 grandkids are really my focus. On the personal side, on the professional side, I would say that being the Chief Digital and IT Officer for the Adecco, more and more it becomes a tech company at the end of the day. And so I would like that our whole function can have impact on the business. And the business for me is shareholders, employees, and all the communities.
Hi, good morning everyone. I'm Dipali Goenka from Welspun Living, India. I lead a home textile company which spans across 60 countries across the globe. We are one of the largest home textiles in the world. And we not only make baths, towels to sheets to rugs to flooring to everything. And I think you would have touched, we would have touched your life somewhere, definitely. I think for me, the main purpose is, and the whole, the foundation is being sustainability. And where today we are talking about sustainability being a green scam, DI not being possible. I think for us, that's the sense of purpose that motivates us at Welspun Living. We were world number one by Dow Jones Sustainability Index. We scored 90 for our ESG goals this year.
So I'm very big on rewarding those who pay attention. The average attention span, especially for the ADHD people like myself, is about 7.25 seconds. Not very big. Our panelists, they said a little bit about themselves. There were two of them that used a particular word over and over again. Can somebody tell me what the word was? And you'll get a Starbucks gift card, by the way. I like the word. Yeah, there's another one, but that was used too. So that technically counts. It starts with a P. Now you used that too, but that was only used once. One more. Come on, purpose. Purpose. And this young lady here, is it Carolyn or Caroline?
Oh, you can choose.
Well, I know the Carolines that I know are always amazing, and the Carolyns I know are always amazing as well. So I'm going to use Carolyn. How many grandkids does Carolyn have?
5.
There we go. So here you go. I'm going to ask you to come on up front. So 5. 5 grandkids. Now I say that because it's important. Of all the things that she could have said about herself, she told you, my grandkids. She thinks in legacy. That it happens after we're gone. It's simply put the path that we left, the footsteps. This word, power. They say power is never taken, it's given. Do we give people power? So I'd like to ask each one of you here to talk about that moment where, boy, you had this difficulty with someone who was in power. And you had to figure out a way to turn it, this obstacle, ultimately into a win. Because each and every one of you got here by facing challenges, things that seemed impossible. And at the time they were impossible. And it probably took 10, 20, 100, 1,000 steps. Because you women up here are the ones that I want my daughter Elsa to learn from.
Right. I'll give you a little example of how I turned power into a strength, and I thought at that point power in my mind was a weakness. I was a young manager, 32 years of age. I had 60 people reporting to me. I was working in a hotel. I felt I had the power to do what I wanted. And I remember thinking the sun starts shining and sets on me. I was very arrogant, extremely aggressive with my team. The team continued to work with me for some time because they had no other option. And in India, by and large, it's a very hierarchical system of working, so no one really speaks to you. And then in 2 weeks, out of the 60 people, 58 of them resigned. They were youngsters. And when the resignations were happening, I remember HR calling me and saying, there's something wrong with the way you are dealing with people. And I wanted to be an ostrich with my head into the sand. And I said, no, everybody has a reason to go. I'm the best thing that happened to this organization. On the 58th resignation, I sat down and I realized that I was going horribly wrong. I was all of 32 then, and I decided to change my style of leadership. And I realized now, I'm 54, in all these years, I have realized the power of people, and that a leader or a manager is absolutely nothing without the team that you work with. So I've gone through that phase in life where power went into my head, but I'm glad I learned a lesson at 32.
Think about that, the lesson. I mean, isn't that what it's all about, these lessons? We want to blame others, but that was your lesson. People tell you who they are with their words. We don't always listen.
Hi, I'm Payal Kapoor, and as I said, I come from a business family, a very privileged one. We are committed at the literacy programs of the country. And when I started, my example of power is one that I started my gallery and my art business in 1996. And when I entered that business, somebody said, oh, this is looking like a passion project. Oh, it looks like a hobby. And you're just nothing but a rich, whatever, so-called privileged person trying to, just pass her time. I heard it, and this was a person who came to me, and the same person cut to today's time. And we are 28 years in the business, amongst the top 10 galleries of the country. We've taken on projects which are humanitarian for the tribal arts of our country, and we are championing these causes. And the same collectors who said that are buying from me. That is my power. Thank you.
I was thinking while the two of you were talking.
Yeah, I was just saying, always is great when you're like number 3.
Yeah, or which examples I would use, right? Because you just gave great examples. Power is a very interesting word, right? Does it correspond to authority? Does it correspond to influence? So there are many meanings, but I thought maybe for this public, which is also a set of women, I remember I started my career with P&G, Procter & Gamble, and it's a company. First thing you get to learn actually when you start is how to write memos. And everybody goes, and especially how you write a recommendation. And so I started in the company, and then suddenly I moved assignment, and I got a much more senior man reporting to me. And in my first meeting with him, he said, I'm not interested to report to a woman. And so I was very young at this stage, so I had no clue what to say. And I said something like, we didn't take the decision, we'll have to work with it, it's now announced, etc., etc. And the relationship with him was pretty difficult as we started to work. But one day he put a recommendation on my desk, and he said, you will earn my respect if you will get the approval to this recommendation. I tried 3 times and I couldn't get approval for it. And it was a recommendation, whatever it is, it was to install fiber into the campus of the European Technical Center. And at that time it was a huge investment, nobody saw the value to do it, and etc., etc. And it had to be approved by the biggest boss of finance for Europe, who obviously was 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe levels above and beyond ourselves. And it was really interesting how I looked at the recommendation. It was actually pretty well done, so I didn't have to change a lot. I was dusting off a couple of elements. But then was the whole thing, how could I get the signature of this person who refused 3 times to sign the record? And actually it was due to my network. Actually, I ended up having very good relationships with finance people in the organization who got access to this person, who actually the recommendation had never been presented to. He only had a paper, anonymous paper, on his desk 3 times, probably on the morning or whatever, looked at it and threw it in the dustbin, right? So the whole point was, how could I get in his office and present it myself? And so long story short, because it's a longer, I ended up being capable of defending the recommendation myself. And he was like, Caroline, where do I need to sign? Okay. And I got back. And actually, what I realized, my aha moment, is that you can get credibility when you are capable of getting something done that potentially other people that maybe are more competent than you could not get through. And I took a picture of, you were talking about impossible, possible, right? I don't know if you walk in the promenade, there is a headline, I took a picture of it, impossible is possible, and actually it's coming from the Emirates, if I remember well, and several people have always told me that, Caroline, your impossible is not part of your vocabulary, and that's now with a lot of stories in these years, and I would recommend that you have the same. Impossible should not be part of your vocabulary.
Thank you.
Let me begin in the year 2003. When I started working, I was a homemaker. Interestingly, you have been professionals. For me, I started my journey as a homemaker into the corporate world. I started my brand Spaces in India for home. And I was working in India for, and I led that company. 2008, I was asked to lead Welspun Home Textiles, which was Welspun India Limited that time. Being a woman in a world where just there were males, and being a promoter's wife was a very interesting one, where when people spoke about, they said that she's coming from privilege. What is she going to do? And when you talked about power, power is a very interesting word, and I feel it doesn't come out of arrogance. It comes out of when people are not expecting anything out of you. And it's where you walk that path to show what you can do. And I think, and that's where, I started working on. I didn't know textiles, by the way. Textiles is a very complex supply chain. I mean, and it starts from cotton, spinning, weaving, and it's an entire ecosystem. What I did, I knew I couldn't I had to play on my strengths, not my weaknesses. I actually knew the consumer the other side. I knew what she wanted. I worked on that. I also rolled up my sleeves to buy cotton, to run the floor, to understand my people. And I think, the important thing today, when I look back and see, has been a great learning. When I took on Welspun India, it was $400 million in revenue. Today it's around $1.2 billion top line, and one of the leading home textiles in the world, along with sustainability being a key pillar to it, with more than 35% women in the entire organization. So for me, power is also about not only being you, but leading people with you, leading everybody together. When I joined, it was 7% women, and today, as I spoke, it's more than 30%, 35% women in the entire organization, is where you make an impact. So power is when, you're doing things when nobody's expecting out of you. Power is about making an impact. Power is making an impact by leading together with everybody.
This is beautiful. You just said something to me that resonates, because it's easy to speak of values when you're struggling, but it's wealth and power that will ultimately prove whether those values were real. When you're in that position to make a difference, and you help lead the organization to 35%,
yeah,
shows me your values were real. The word was used a couple times. We're going to go back to, and I love this word because you used it and you used it. I've never used this word before. And I will tell you, as a journalist, never used it. It's another P word. You said it earlier. Another one. Privilege. Privilege. There's a couple people, so I'm going to need an assistant. Studi, would you be my assistant and give some gift cards? And this is like the honesty factor, because I have to make these last for the next day. So, Studi, would you give, so raise your hand if you said the word privilege, but be honest. Perfect, thank you so much. Privilege. I would look at all of us and say, you're privileged. I thought that there was a period of time where I was the only one. I was that foster kid. I lived in an orphanage when I was a little boy.
Thank you.
And I didn't think people understood until I realized, boy, I wasn't that special after all. That everybody has something that they've tucked inside, that they carry with them. That you either choose to become a volunteer victim, or you find the strength to transcend it, to rise beyond that. Looking at over the next 5 years, there was a gentleman over here, a younger buck, that I disagree with. He said that 250 ultimately didn't matter. And I go, it does matter. Because if projected by the year 2050, there could be up to 1.2 billion people that are going to be displaced. You just used the number 1.2 billion. 1.2 billion people could potentially lose their homes around the world. Food scarcity, water problems. And you ask yourself, 2070, 2080, we first have to solve one of the biggest crises that our world has ever seen. We are not ready for a dystopian moment. We are not prepared for what happens in that. Preparation starts before. The time to build your brand is before you have one. So talk about preparation, the 1.2 billion to get there, to help the 1.2 billion people.
You know, you're talking about 1.2 billion people. I talk about 1.4 billion people in my country, right? You're talking about, a country that is aspiring to become the fourth largest, which is the fourth largest economy in the world. But there is that kind of a delta for the economy to really pivot up. You know, the difference, you've talked about water, there's a scarcity, there's a lot of other things, we talk about those issues, but the important thing here is about that 50% population you're talking about, that is going to make that difference. And what is that? It is the women. And I always believe that, in the country which is progressing, in a country where you really need to be, which is heading to aspire to be now the third largest economy as well, if that 50% population doesn't work, is not part of any decision making, the country's not going to impact and not grow. And why? Because if a woman is empowered, the child goes to school. In a country where I can tell you, and I have a small program and I want to share it with everybody here. It's called the Spun, where the women of the communities work with us. There are around 3,500 women in the communities with the work centers across Kutch in an arid part of a country, if I tell you, western part of a country in Gujarat. We upcycle over 2 tons of rags every month out of the factory wastes, where they make rugs and cushions out of it. They are actually they're operating their own bank account. Their children are going to school, to the extent one of the women bought a motorbike for her son who was going to work. This empowerment is very powerful for a woman. And that's where she really starts making an impact. You talked about that 1.2 billion. I talk about this 50% in my country. And that is where India actually needs the literacy rate. We still are behind China. We're not even 60 to 70%. And I think for us as a country, that's going to be very, very powerful. In the world of AI, I think we're talking about displacing. I am talking about inclusion.
But how do you do that, though? Because it is said that whoever controls the youth controls the nation. So, Ranju, how do we get to the youth? Because ultimately, that will be the only path forward, because if nothing changes, nothing will change.
So, as we all know, for the youth today, the digital world is the one that clicks. And I think the easiest way to get to the youth today is the digital world. And we've seen, I don't want to get into controversial topics here, but we saw what happened in Nepal, and we saw what happened in Bangladesh and in Iran. It's the youth.
Would you educate some of them in the room? Because not all of them know what's in your head and know the history of the culture of the region. And not picking sides or not, but just tell them these are the facts.
Yeah, it's the uprising of the youth, and it all started with the digital world. So to your question, how do you get to the youth? I think the easiest way today is to get through to them through the digital world. Also with the youth, just advisory speeches don't work. You have to share stories. they relate to stories. They have to be relatable for them to understand. Storytelling is the most powerful tool of communication in the world today, and that is what we should be focusing on in case you want to get to that larger population.
We have last 5 minutes.
5 minutes? We can do this like forever. Lock the door, they're not coming in. Where's the family? Yeah, lock it, we're not gonna let them in. Stories. Whose story that you've heard in your journey along the way has been for you the thing that just touched you the most? Of all the stories. And then Carolyn, I'm gonna ask you the same question, my dear.
For me, I think when I look back at the stories, I see the story of, well, it sounds very cliche, but it is Mother Teresa who has done this really well. And being a woman, the way she was compassionate, took her part and led us into basically, admiring the fact that it is human touch which is most important in life. Yes, AI is very important. For me, I think collecting, as from my gallery point of view, collecting is more of, collecting with cultural participation has to be with also along with makes it a value creation. So for me, humans are very, very important, and that is what that is my inspiration.
You continue to believe in a human-centered world.
I do. However, I know we need technology, we need AI, but yes, as Dipali put it, we are a country of 140 million people, and yes, we have a lot of other problems, and we have to see it, exclusively as a whole, rather than just saying, oh, let's just go technology, let's go technology. Technology is important. It is important. Without that, we all can't survive today, but the human touch is seriously very important.
Carolyn, 5 grandbabies.
Yeah.
Grandbabies. Whose story that you're like, Dustin, I gotta tell you, I'll never forget this one person.
You know what? I think the story here that I want to talk about has not yet been written. I mean, because you're right on, right? Because I have already those grandkids, sometimes I'm wondering in which world are they going to live? We use the word privilege. I think we're all privileged versus what we have known. I mean, depending obviously of our age, we all have lived a little bit longer or a little bit less. But more or less until COVID hit us and until some governments have started to go in wild directions. I mean, we have been pretty privileged, right? We're potentially not of the generation of our parents that lived through a couple of wars. And I know it depends where you're coming from in the world. And I'm coming from Belgium, so I'm a little bit biased on this whole Western Europe, although I go a lot to India, so I know a lot what's happening there. But I think the story that we need to write, and it's a little bit a pity that it's not being discussed more in this Davos, is how are we going to live a better world to our kids, grandkids, right? And are we focused on this? I don't think anyone is focused on that. We have a couple of maybe niches, but most of the people are talking about wealth, are talking about power, are talking about AI, about all those technology components, but I mean, how are we going to live a better world? Yes, there are quite some people that talk about climate, that talk about how we can preserve the environment, and I think, but we need to be able to put it all together. And I think it's the responsibility of the CEOs of the very influential companies, and I put them first before the governments, because I think they have much more influence than potentially the governments have. Then the whole environment needs to work as well, whether it's communities, governments, whoever. Yeah. And then it's all of us. It's all of us, right? And I think the privilege we have as being a woman is that maybe it touches us more because we are caring, because of what you say, we put children in the schools, and I think the more women will have influence, probably the better we will be going forward. And so that's why the few of us that are maybe role models in wherever we are, and that have grown one way or another, we need to drag all of the women with us, right? Young, a little bit less young, a little bit more senior, we need to drag them with us.
So, this feedback that is. You've heard now from a group of women. By the way, while I love the name Global Women, I look at this and say Global Women United. Because it's not a network, it's this unity that goes along with it. And that the goal is to leave this world far better than the way we found it.
Exactly.
So thank you to everyone in this room. Thank you, Studi, for no one knows how much